It's now time for Dancing Through Life in Dublin, a program produced and presented by Marie-Angèle Nasco and made with the support of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. Why do you dance?
It gives me energy and it connects everything in my body.
I dance for the freedom that it brings to me. I dance for the love, for the joy, for the ecstasy that I feel when I dance. Just like the expression, dance like no one's watching. I love that. And it's just the freedom that I've always been looking for in my life was when I found dance.
I dance because it is my personal tonic for well-being. If I don't dance, my body becomes stiff and full of complaints, and I lose that sense of vitality and freedom to express the best parts of myself, the most essential parts of my being. And it's that disconnection from spirit, from my own core, from my own heart, that calls me back to dance. And when I'm dancing, I am at one with the universe. I am at peace. I am free of all worries and discontent. I'm totally living in the present and totally in connection with all those I'm dancing with, and it's a blessing.
In our new island of today, we have people from many communities, people whose command of English may not be good enough to maintain a very in-depth conversation, and yet they're really keen to connect with us. And in many cultures, actually, dance is a very important part of the community. Can you tell us how dance and music can build bridges between people?
One of the aspects I feel that's important is that the richness that is brought to Ireland from people from different countries in terms of dance and about music. There's a huge richness that we can actually be inspired from and learn from. And if I take it down to even a more practical point, say in the dance, in the funky genre, where you see people from different countries and it's like they have it already ingrained in their bones, in their body, and they enjoy the dance and they enjoy the movement without being under the influence of any drugs or alcohol. I think we can, as Irish people, be very inspired from that and learn from that. It can be a fantastic thing to witness and to dance with someone who is free in their body. And not to say that Irish people aren't, but there is levels of comfortableness in dancing that you certainly see in people that come to Ireland, say from the Latin countries, from African countries, where there's a more comfort in free dancing. And I certainly feel blessed that people like that are coming to the funky genre, so we can experience a bit of that and learn from a bit of that, actually.
Would you say that tango is a way to rebuild the communities?
It could be, yes. The things that sometimes communities have is like a social understanding of each other in the first place. A community can be built if there is so many people trying to push against each other. And in tango, actually, the fact is that people join themselves and they try to create something together in order that many people can enjoy this art, which is tango. And sometimes that doesn't really happen in a community scenario because people is so concerned about what they need, what they are thinking about one thing or the other. What that is impossible to build a community in that way because everybody is very concerned about themselves, about their own need, how they are going to survive for the next day. And once they start to step back of all that things that are very relevant, then they can actually achieve something. Fortunately, in tango, that element is not there, or at least it's much more pure because people is trying to think what they can do just to make the tango as an art be much more, well, not important, but how to make it grow more.
In the current situation in Ireland, a lot of social activities and community-based activities, particularly for younger generations, are very much involved in drink and drugs. And I think what that can do is develop a kind of a sense of fractured way of connecting with other people, because we get into states where we're not fully conscious. So there's not that sense of continued connection, you know, the sense of kind of follow-up and gaining a deeper connection and relationship with other people, because it's buffered by being kind of unconscious. So what I feel is extremely important and could be very beneficial is social activities and community activities where it's very much a conscious event and very much about remaining in the body and in the mind and alert and awake, and something that we can remember the next day, we can connect with on a continual basis. One of the things that is really encouraging for me about the Funky Seomra is the sense of community that's developing around that, the friendships that are being created, and then the social networks that are being created. People are kind of linking in much more together with each other and meeting up in between the events. Like, you'd see the friendships being formed, and also you'd see at the Funky Seomra people, they can go up and talk to people, talk to strangers, and then at the next Funky Seomra they're not a stranger anymore. So there's really a sense of kind of weaving something together, which is extremely encouraging for me.
Tell me about the outreach program. You do some work in the community as well. Tell me about that.
We set up Cushcane Broadreach, our performance program, and the Broadreach outreach program run in parallel with one another. I've met so many people that want to be creative, and I suppose I see it as a feeding that need of people wanting to be creative with dance, to get involved with Cushcane, and to also to educate our potential audience so they have a reference point to the work that they're seeing. So I suppose for me, Broadreach is trying to put a reference point for people to be able to articulate what they're seeing, and they either like it or they dislike it, but they have a feeling, they have a point of view. We have a younger people's group called Creative Steps, who are young people between the ages of 15 and 22. And they meet once and twice a week, where we make pieces with them and they perform in youth dance festivals. They've also made 5 different short dance films, which is incredible, which they've directed themselves and written themselves. So it's to encourage creativity in younger people rather than they turn up and they learn steps. It's that they have to think through the why and the how of making choreography. And we also have an older age group program where we've worked for the last 3 years with the Bealtaine Festival, which celebrates creativity with older people, and we work with people who are 50 plus in dance. Instead of teaching them steps, we try to teach them on a kind of very basic level to be creative with their bodies and be creative in dance. I think as people grow older, the stories in their bodies become more interesting. As much as the outreach program for me, teaching or sharing our skills to people, they actually share their skills back. It's a two-way dialogue, you know, and I really like that that's the case, and just learned so much from people. And for that reason, that really makes it extraordinary, because it makes me a better artist, and hopefully it shares my skills with other people, and I think it shapes the work eventually, and it shapes our audience. The Bealtaine project last year was sponsored by Dublin City Council, so we were able to do a 6-week programme in, I think, 7 venues throughout Dublin. So we would go into different communities throughout Dublin. So that was very kindly sponsored by Dublin City Council and Bealtaine Festival itself. So we were able to do that for free. We always try to keep the fees obviously low down, so that some money should not get in the way of not being able to be creative and to be part of it. And that's really important.
I've been working with refugees for the past 8 or 9 years, and I can see the potential for linking the work that I'm doing now with the community that I was working with. I was working with the VEC and with an organisation called Sparassi. One of the motivations for doing what I'm doing in terms of the alcohol and drug-free community activities is that there's a lot of isolation in terms of the refugee community, certainly with cultures where drink and drugs are not a prevalent part of socialising. There was a lot of isolation, so it was a strong motivation for me to start creating these events.
You were also the Irish representative in a Socrates project.
It was a collaboration between grassroots organisations and universities throughout Europe, and the focus was very much about building community, building bridges in community, and building things from the grassroots up. So it was all people working on the ground with communities, and there were various aspects of that. There was homelessness, there was the environment, and the group that I was involved in was about building bridges between the different communities that are living in Ireland. There were organisations in Holland, in England and in Scandinavia that we were working with closely in developing the likes of the Funky Seomra and developing that as a template that we can bring to different countries and maybe collaborate with organisations in different countries to offer a similar thing to the Funky Seomra over there.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a wonderful idea to have the Funky Seomra or equivalent in all counties of Ireland, and also communities that could travel and meet up. I was just thinking, once you learn tango, you can go wherever you want in the world, even if you don't speak the language, and there will be tango social nights. Wouldn't it be great to have an equivalent of the Funky Seomra?
What I'm finding at the moment is people are travelling long distances to come to it, and it would be fantastic to offer it in local communities. You're mentioning tango, where I did different work like the 5 Rhythms, where you'd go to Australia and you could go to a 5 Rhythms class, and it's almost like kind of a home from home in a way. And it would be fantastic to develop the Funky Seomra in the same way. That
sounds like really interesting work. And you also do some work in a more focused way. You call your class Embodiment. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what this is about?
Embodiment was the precursor to the Funky Seomra. It's about coming back into the body, taking time out to take stock and to breathe our way back into the body, and then to start to move from inside the body. So that would be very much the focus of Embodiment. It's about what it feels like and the experience of it, and there's a sense of inviting ourselves back into the bodies. And it's also beginning to listen to the body so we can learn from the body, because the body is full of wisdom and full of knowledge as to how we are and where we are in ourselves, and where we could do with some healing, or do with some reflection, or do with some space to develop and to grow, and to listen to the body so we can develop into who we can become.
And I think that's probably a prerequisite in socializing afterwards. Just to take the example of tango again, if people learn steps and then haven't learned how to really connect, then they're not really doing tango, they're just doing steps. The first step is to connect with yourself first.
Yeah.
And when you can connect with yourself properly, then it's easier to connect with another person, and also then to take it at a community level. Once you have that connection with yourself and with one another, you can then connect with the community as a whole.
I think you've touched into the very core of what it is that I'd aspire to teach, is about coming back into and connecting with exactly where we are and who we are, so we can begin to connect with another, and then in time beginning to develop connection with the wider community.
Synergy means that the sum is greater than all the parts, that what each participant or each part contributes to the whole is essential and creates something wonderful and larger and more meaningful than each individual part could produce. Synergy involves a clear and positive structure with the elements. We move through earth, water, air, fire, and earth. And each element within a synergy class relates to certain body parts and certain ways of expressing our energy. We would begin with ether, which is our sense of space and our connection with spirit. Usually the type of music that would invoke this connection is instrumental or a vocalist, where there is a call to our spirit, to our essence, to get in touch with that in a very deep sense. It opens up space within the body for new energy to come in. Then we move into the element of deep water, where we allow energy to flow down to the deeper parts of ourselves. And within the body, this would be the pelvic area, to allow energy to clear away any blocking pains or irritations in the body, so that the new energy can nourish and nurture us from the inside out.
So what type of music would fit with water then?
Water is flowing instrumental music. Often we would draw on Latin sounds, or we may draw on Indian music from India, for example, where there's a flow and slower rhythms.
And then having moved through water, what is the next element?
Then we go into air. Air is the element that gets all the energy moving and circulating throughout the body. It is the element behind all the other elements. It moves the water, for example, creating waves. It gets the fire started. It clears and cleanses the earth of debris. And with air, we're working with the limbs, the arms and the legs, the ankles and the shoulders, for example, and creating sweeping types of movements to get the energy flowing from the crown of the head all the way down to the toes.
So then, having moved through things with air, what happened next?
Then we go into fire. Fire is the place where we get the heat rising in the body from the center, from the solar plexus. We clear out any anger or frustration that blocks our creative expression and joy. And once we've cleared that energy, then we can begin to express what's deep within us and move from this place where we can be most authentic. So the energy movements originate in the solar plexus and spiral outwards into the thighs and into the eyes, and are expressed with great passion then. And the types of music that inspire this movement would be fast and active type rhythms. Then we go into earth, where we contain the energy in the body. We allow the energy to settle and create optimal health and vitality and longevity. This is nurturing energy. And it's also important to be aware that the energy needs to be freed in the earth element as well, that we can get stuck with fear that can paralyze us. We can get rigid knees or a stiff neck, for example, which correlate with the earth element. So we first clear those blocking energies with movements engaging the neck and knees and the colon area. And then from there we can contain the vital energy that we've created with all the other elements.
So what would you say the benefit are of coming to a synergy class?
The benefit would be that you not only serve yourself in improving your own sense of well-being, in invoking, inviting life force energy into your body, but also what is so essential and wonderful is the connection, the energetic connection that is shared with all participants present, and how you can support and nurture each other in this space that's created, a compassionate and respectful space where each person is honored in their unique way of expressing their creative energy and sense of being in the world. It frees something in everybody.
Tell us about the community aspect of biodanza.
Now, we talked about community as in working with our effective connection with others.
How can that help to rebuild a community? Because a lot of people feel very isolated. People who have moved from abroad or from different countries and maybe on their own, or people who come from broken families, broken marriages. All sort of people who, for a reason or another, find themselves feeling very isolated. Do you feel that biodanza can help to rebuild our communities?
You're talking about isolation and loneliness, and community is about connection. And it's what we all crave for, is to be connected, to connect with each other and to connect with ourselves at a much deeper level. When we're disconnected in ourselves and we're shut off from our emotions and our feelings, how can we connect to others? So biodanza is about really bringing you into the emotions and living from feeling and dancing from feeling. We work with ourselves, the connection of ourselves, the connection of another, and connection of the group, which is so profound. It really brings a sense of homecoming to ourselves, a belonging, a homecoming to the group. When we have that in our bodies and the embodiment of it, that's how we bring it out into the world.
So give us an example of what would happen in a biodanza class.
Well, in a biodanza class, we start off just with a walk. And it's to, maybe jazzy rhythm, very, very strong rhythm. And that helps us to connect with ourselves first. So we're connecting with the rhythm of the music. So there's different ways we walk. It's walking with synergism. So it's alternating the right hand with the left foot. So this really starts to bring our whole body into rhythm, and also moving the whole body with our chest, our arms, our hands, our hips, our head. So it's an integration of the three centres that I talked about before, our intellect, our heart and our sensuality, which is really important, and bringing the whole of ourselves into life. So we're learning to walk with connecting with others, with eye contact as well, and being totally present to ourselves and present to each other. We also work with circles, and the circles can be representative of the circles of life, and how we're all equal in that circle, and how we begin in a circle and how we end in a circle as well. The beginning is like an initiation, a ceremony, and the ending is the same, this ending the ceremony, but in some way we've changed in that circle. In the time, the hour and a half of dance, we've danced through the different emotions that might have been coming up for us. We've shared a lot, and we've come together as a community. So you have an incredible effective link again with the community. We also do incredible South American music connections with others. We can do segmentary movements, which is isolating the different movements on the body, where we hold around our chest and our heart. Sometimes the movement from that will open our hearts more to emotion. We can do segmentary movement of the neck, very, very slow movement, which helps us to dissolve any tension around that area, and also integrating more our intellect with our heart. And then we can have segmentary movement of the hips and the pelvis, and that helps us to integrate our sensuality and open up that part in ourselves. Some people haven't felt pleasure there in a long time. You'd be surprised, you know. And then we do a dance of integrating the whole three centres. And it's always about the inner movement in Pia Danza. And that's the connection with our soul. It's to dance from the inner movement within is the healing, the transformation that goes on with music. And music can delve in very, very deep into the body where sometimes no words can reach. And I think that's very, very important, that it resonates so much from deep within us. If you listen to a beautiful piece of classical music, it can bring tears to your eyes, and it stirs emotions that maybe you've never realised you had. So it's about really connecting in with the deep emotions that come in through our bodies, and to release them and to come into a healthier, more loving environment.
This program featured David Bolger, David Mooney, Julian Brigitte, Danielle Vierling and Gillian Gavin. Produced and presented by Marie-Angèle Lascaux, this program was made with the support of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland.